Welcome to our flip video lesson 5.05, The New Imperialism. This goes along with your Human Odyssey reading pages 573 to 591, and then your student guide pages 355 to 363. Lesson Introduction, The New Imperialism. When Marco Polo wrote about his travels in the 1300s, he inspired people all over Europe to explore Asia and to discover its riches. A Scottish missionary, doctor, and explorer named David Livingstone did something very similar in the late 1800s. His descriptions of the beauty of Africa and its resources created quite a sensation. Could the unfamiliar land help the industrial nations in Europe solve their problems? They needed raw materials and fuel for their factories. They needed places to sell their finished products. What treasures did Africa hold? And what would they have to do to get them? So these are your learning objectives for this lesson. Many of them are covered in detail in the readings from your Human Odyssey book, pages 573 to 591. Remember, we can't quite cover all of this in detail during our flip video or during our class session, so it is important that you are completing your readings as we're working through this lesson. So the objectives are: explain the reasons for the new imperialism, identify key events and individuals in the expansion of the British Empire, describe the way Africa was divided among the European powers, identify on a map the major areas of colonization by Britain, Belgium, Japan, France, Russia, and the United States, describe the effects of colonization on the people of the colonized territories, and identify major countries and events in the new imperialism in Asia. So we are going to start on page 357 in your Human Odyssey book, or in your student guide. So make sure you do have that open, ready to go. Flip to page 357, and we'll start with question 1. Reasons for European interest in overseas. As Europeans built more and more factories, they searched the rest of the world for raw materials and for markets for the goods their factories produced. European nations were also looking for new supplies of fuel for the large modern navies they had built. Many Europeans were interested in overseas colonies because they thought they should spread what they considered their superior civilization. So again, make sure you're filling these in. If we go too fast during the flip video, remember you can always pause the video. The notes are also posted in the OMS, so you can always look through the slides there. Number 2, imperialism and new imperialism. The policy of action by which one country controls another country or territory is called imperialism. New imperialism refers to the period between the 1870s and 1910 when European nations tried to expand their empires. Questions number 3 and 4, trading and expansion. The British East India Company begins to set up trading posts in India in the 17th century. During the expansion of the empire, the ruler of England was Queen Elizabeth. Number 5, meaning of the expression, the sun never sets on the British Empire. The empire was so vast that some part of it was always in daylight. It spanned the globe. The empire spread from the Atlantic to the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Its territories included Ireland, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Ceylon, India, Malaya, Hong Kong, and some parts of the West Indies and parts of Africa. So if you picture in your head a map and picture all of those places, you can see why the saying was the sun never sets on the British Empire. Question number 6, Sepoy Mutiny. In 1857, many of the Hindu and Muslim soldiers in India rebelled because they were insulted when they were forced by the East India Company to use grease cartridges made from the fat of hogs and cows. The mutiny released tension that had been building up for years as the British tried to impose their ways on the Indian population. After 2 years of brutal conflict, the British government shut down the East India Company and started ruling India directly. Question number 7, India under British rule. The British improved the telephone and telegraph systems, and they expanded the network of railroads and irrigation canals, but most Indians still lived in poverty. Benjamin Disraeli. Benjamin Disraeli was a British statesman who challenged Britain to become a great imperial country. Pseudoscience ideas. Pseudoscience ideas include beliefs, theories, or practices that have been or are considered scientific, but they have no basis in scientific fact. This could mean they were disproved scientifically, can't be tested scientifically, or lack evidence to support them. Some social scientists misuse the ideas of Charles Darwin in order to say that some races were superior to others. This pseudoscientific view of race affected the way British treated their colonies. And as we've talked about, some of these pseudoscientist ideas then led to other issues in the world even that we have today. So you can take a look at this chart here. This chart is not in your student guide, but this is just something additional to kind of compare science to pseudoscience. Questions number 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. And just kind of a little sidebar, David Livingstone. Do any of you recognize that name from any famous movies that you may have seen? We can discuss that in class. So this is, again, questions 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. David Livingstone. He was the Scottish missionary, physician, and explorer who shaped the way Europeans thought about Africa. As he traveled throughout Africa, Livingstone tried to convert people to Christianity and tried to help the people find profitable businesses to replace the slave trade. Livingstone named the spectacular waterfall he encountered Victoria Falls to honor the Queen of England. When Livingstone returned to Britain, he gave many speeches about his experiences in Africa. He talked about the evils of slave trade, the beauty of Africa, and the economic potential of Africa. The Royal Geographic Society persuaded Livingstone to look for the source of the Nile. There's a lot there, so again, you can always pause this video if needed. Questions 15, 16, and 17. Canal across the Isthmus of Suez. The French were eager to build a canal across the Isthmus of Suez. They wanted to link the Mediterranean and Red Seas so they could avoid a long, dangerous, and expensive journey across Africa to reach their outposts in Asia. Ferdinand de Lesseps was the Frenchman in charge of building the Suez Canal. Before the canal was built, the trip between London and India took about 3 months. After the shortcut through the Suez Canal, after it was opened, the trip took approximately 3 weeks. So they cut it down from 3 months to 3 weeks, but it was a huge undertaking to do. Questions 18 and 19. Britain and Egypt and the Suez Canal. When the Egyptian Khedive became desperate for money, he sold his shares in the canal project to Queen Victoria. This quickly changed the relationship developed between Britain and Egypt. The Britons soon dominated Cairo and the rest of Egypt. They had a strong hand in running Egyptian affairs. And these pages are optional. So these are the ones that go above and beyond your reading pages. You do not have to do them, but they are optional and they are recommended because they will help with your understanding of this lesson. So this is dividing up the riches, Africa number 1 and 3. And you'll see this switches back and forth. I want to show you this really quickly on page 359 in your student guide. You'll see there's questions here. Here we go. There's questions and there's a map. So there's number 1's a question and then there's a map. And then you'll see number 2 is a question and number 3, but then there's map questions mixed in. So you're going to see in these optional pages, like this is question 1 and 2. We skipped question 3 or this is questions 1 and 3. We skipped questions 2. The page numbers do not go in order. Okay, so just a quick note. So in 1877, King Leopold of Belgium declared, "We must obtain a slice of this magnificent gâteau africain, this magnificent African cake." The king was inspired by the writings of David Livingstone. King Leopold saw a great opportunity for Europeans to spread their civilization, and he wanted Belgium to claim some of the raw materials he saw in Africa. What role did the Africans play in 1884 and 1885 conferences about the future of Africa? The Africans were not invited to the conferences, so therefore their role was, or their voice was not heard. Here we have question 2, and then you notice we skipped to 8, 9, 11, and 12. So if you look at that map over there on the right-hand side, King Leopold's slice of cake he claimed for Belgium was the Congo River. The British claimed Egypt, Sudan, Gold Coast, Northern Rhodesia, Southern Rhodesia, and South Africa. The French colonized Algeria, French West Africa, Tunisia, and Morocco. The Spanish claimed Spanish West Africa, the German claimed German West Africa and German East Africa. The Portuguese claimed Portuguese West and East Africa. This is questions 5, 6, and 7. This is Cecil Rhodes. He was an ambitious businessman who moved to Southern Africa because his doctor had advised him to live in a warm climate. He devoted himself to expanding the British Empire and getting rich. Rhodes invested in the diamond and coal industries. He dreamt of expanding the British Empire, so he used his personal army to conquer a vast region in Africa. He named it Rhodesia. This is questions 11 and 13, dividing up the riches, Ethiopians, Liberians, and Italians. The Ethiopians were able to drive out the Italians, but the Italians succeeded in colonizing other areas of northern Africa. In all, Africa, only Liberia and Ethiopia remained independent. This covers question number 14. Why were the Europeans able to gain control of nearly the entire African continent? The Europeans had advanced weaponry such as machine guns and repeating rifles. They had railroads and steamships that could be used to move troops and raw materials quickly. They could communicate rapidly by telegraph and telephone. This covers number 15. In 1914, the British controlled India, Ceylon, and the Malaya states. Australia's color is a little bit deceiving. It's not part of Britain rule. You can see right here, Australia down here. Oh, my slide is a little bit off there. There we go. Australian rule down here. It's not part of Britain. The color's a bit deceiving. France controlled Indochina. The United States claimed the Philippine Islands, and the Netherlands had the Dutch Indies. This covers question number 16. Britain and other industrial powers demanded trading rights in China. Britain, France, Germany, Russia, the United States, and Japan sent in troops equipped with modern weapons, and each claimed a part of China. So as you can see, this has, like I said, these are optional pages, but this has a lot to do with the lesson that we're studying, and you will see some of these on your assessment, on your quiz for this lesson. So I would highly recommend you filling in these pages. Dividing up the riches, invasions, and trade deals. This is number 17 through 23. The colonizing countries worked out a policy that none of them would close its portion of China to trade with the others. The policy was known as an open door policy. Rebels in China tried to end Western domination in the Boxer Rebellion. The industrial nations crushed the rebellion with their superior weapons, and foreigners continued to control China. In 1853, the United States used military power to force Japan to open its door to foreign trade. To avoid conflict, Russia and Britain marked off Afghanistan as a land to separate their empires. In the mid-19th century, the French sent troops into Indochina, which today are known as Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. The United States gained control of Guam and the Philippine Islands as a result of the Spanish-American War. And here we come to the end of this very long flip video. Imperialism. The definition is a policy of extending a country's power and influence through diplomacy or military force. The historical definition, rule by an emperor. So, thank you so much for joining me for this flip video lesson. I know it was very long. There was a lot of information there. So, if you need to go back, pause the video, look on your OMS. The slides are there, so you can go ahead and fill in your student guide pages. What was that? Pages, here we go, 355 to 363. Thanks so much for joining me today.